Why is it that puppets arouse such a specific response in us as humans? What is it about their pleasant attachment to childhood and simultaneous uncanny horror that draws us to puppetry as a medium? In his essay on the madness of puppets, Kenneth Gross writes, "There is something in the puppet that ties its dramatic life more to the shapes of dreams and fantasy, the poetry of the unconscious, than to any realistic drama of human life. That is part of its uncanniness, that for all its concreteness, the puppet's motions and shapes have the look of things we often turn away from, put off, or bury. It creates an audience tied together by childlike, if not childish, things." That concept is explored in the 2022 British television show Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Using the puppet and the puppet-esque, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared creates a world of childlike fantasy marred by ineffable horror comprised of blood, but simultaneously truth and markers of reality that are more gruesome than any gore you can imagine. By bringing puppetry back to its original roots in its appeal to children and the masses, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared creates a more effective commentary on our socio-political moment than the satire that merely criticizes specific political figures. As children, we are often told that we can be anything we want to be when we grow up. There are millions of fields we can work in, and the only limitations on us are our own ability to work hard to get there. Yet as many millennials and increasingly Gen Z are experiencing, we often find ourselves working meaningless jobs in meaningless fields with no recollection of how we got here, and the inescapable feeling that we'll be here forever. And instead of being able to relish in our dissatisfaction, we are told to love our jobs, that we are part of a family, that we must be team players, and are brainwashed into believing that our anxiety and depression can be fixed if we just accept our realities. This idea lays the groundwork for the first episode of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, where the main characters are sung a song with the lyrics,
"You can be anything you want to do, it's totally up to you,"
but are ultimately abandoned in a factory where they are forced to work, turning bits into parts that are then recycled back into the bits they will use to make the parts. When one character protests his being there, he is fired and fed to the care hound, who ultimately brainwashes him into the perfect worker.
"I'd better get back to work."
But when he returns to the factory, 40 years have passed where his friends are about to retire, and the episode ends with a gory incident that catalyzes the realization that they are still in the song and no time has actually passed at all. When the green guy asks,
"What was all of that? All of that stuff that we just did? What was it all for?"
he is thrown a single coin. All of that horror, a whole life spent in the meaningless pursuit of profit. Showing this commentary of our economic and social conditions through puppets and children's content is no accident. The history of puppets in Britain dates back to over 600 years ago, but the type of puppetry we know today dates back to the 18th and 19th century Punch and Judy shows that were often shown to children in portable booths with slapstick comedy surrounding Punch and his wife Judy. At its core, puppetry was functioning at the margins of the market economy and accessible to the broadest possible spectrum of audiences, not only in terms of class, but even in terms of age. Puppetry was literally situated in the marginal social spheres of carnival, fairground, and the marketplace. It was not until later when puppetry became fashionable adult entertainment in the form of marionette theatres in London. But from its conception, puppetry was a form of art for the masses and often intertwined with commentary on the monarchy. The founder of Bread and Puppet Theatre, which often showed puppets criticizing landlords, cops, and the Vietnam War, Peter Schumann describes puppetry as subversive and untamable as a medium, while puppeteer Jin Shi cites narratives characterized by extraordinary and outstanding techniques of exaggeration that are best deployed as weapons of social critique. Puppetry is evidently not only for children, but the whimsical aspects of a children's puppet show similar to Sesame Street are found in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, creating an uncanny and simple yet powerful commentary. Within this lineage comes the 80s British television satire known as Spitting Image, which documents the political and personal lives of British politicians as puppets, mainly Margaret Thatcher, who, along with Ronald Reagan in the US, ushered in an age of neoliberalism characterized by free market economy, free trade, deregulation and privatization, limited social programs, strong property rights, weak unions, and the personal sovereignty of individuals. In real time, British and American citizens were witnessing a new age of politics that destroyed many social institutions and protections for the working class. As Keen Brillenberg argues in his work on Spitting Image and satire, public personas were created through the puppets that are attached to objects of satire like Thatcher, and then expose weaknesses, vices, and inadequacies in the public figures when consumed on television. In an age marred by political figures actively deploying their will to destroy the fabric of a thriving society for the average person, it is no wonder that puppets were used to critique those figures. In that time, satire of this type was groundbreaking, shocking, and innovative. But in the age of SNL and impersonation parody on social media, our current era is oversaturated with satire and impressions of political figures making fools out of themselves and proving how corrupt they are. Spitting Image itself even rebooted in 2020 to criticize current figures like Trump, but it was received poorly compared to the original series, with many critics calling it tame and toothless, citing how daily life these days is more cynical of public figures and authority, which creates a show criticizing political figures that feels tired and overdone. What Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared does that subverts this is creating social commentary that criticizes conditions rather than political figures, which is ultimately more effective in our current epoch. Rather than make the protagonists objects of satire, creating policies and spouting rhetoric against the common person, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared portrays the conditions of neoliberalism from the perspective of the common person as the protagonist on the receiving end of these conditions. They are brainwashed into believing they can be anything they want, pigeonholed into meaningless jobs that consume their life, and brainwashed into believing that they are part of a family that seeks to serve their best interest while simultaneously putting them in danger. We experience these conditions along the protagonists as they encounter them, and we reflect on our own lives where these circumstances arise. As puppets on a show seemingly for kids, there is a sense of nostalgia that is almost disturbing. We are so sick of our adult lives. We long for childhood representations where things are dumbed down for us with pretty shapes and fun colors, and the performance and play of a song and dance and anthropomorphized objects. So many are drawn to this concept because there is a sense of unease that comes with something so reminiscent of our childhood. But then we are simply presented with the cruel facts of life as we know them to be, facts that many feel are inalienable from our reality. And through the entropic, humoristic, horrific, and absurd, we arrive at a depiction that Spitting Image neglects, the very real outcomes for the very real people who bear the brunt of policies that our members of Parliament or members of Congress enact. And ultimately, our moment needs these representations more than they need another Donald Trump impersonator.